My wife wanted an open marriage. After I started dating, she wants to add more rules. 2.5 years ago, my wife, Sarah, asked to open our marriage. She strongly implied that the alternative was divorce. After thinking it through, I agreed primarily because we have 2 children, and the idea of divorce sounded horrible. I set some ground rules. No bringing dates into our house. No dating mutual friends, acquaintances, family members, or colleagues, and keeping things private. For the next 2 years, I focused on my jobs and my kids. I worked long hours, and the little free time I had was devoted entirely to my children. I didn't have time for dating and wasn't even trying. I moved into another room because the thought of Sarah being intimate with another man and then sleeping in our bed felt unbearable. Our relationship became purely transactional. We were partners in raising the kids, and I didn't want to know anything about her personal life. This summer, I reached a turning point. I achieved my financial goals. I'm debt-free, my kids' college funds are secure, and I've set aside savings for their future home deposits. With those milestones met, I decided to cut back my work hours from 74 per week to just 30. Sarah wanted to take on new debt for a house and car, but I refused. With my newfound free time, I took my older son on a vacation across the US, renovated our house, turned the basement into a man cave, started working out, playing sports, and living a healthier life. Eventually, I decided to try dating. I'm not someone who's comfortable with casual intimacy. I want a connection first. I dated a few women and eventually met Jane, with whom I clicked. We enjoyed going to concerts, art galleries, comic cons, movies, and yes, we were intimate too. Sarah began asking about my dates, but I told her I wasn't comfortable sharing. Then I caught her snooping through my phone. This led to a heated argument. Shortly after, Sarah said she wanted to renegotiate the terms of our open marriage. Her new demands included repairing our marriage through counseling, sleeping in the same room again, spending more time together as a couple, restricting outside relationships to intimacy only with no emotional connections, sharing details about our external partners. I told her I was content with the current arrangement and encouraged her to find a partner to spend time with if she wanted. I made it clear that I didn't want to talk about our external relationships. However, she stood firm on her demands, and now I'm torn between trying to fix our marriage or filing for divorce. Sarah and I have been married for over a decade, and our relationship wasn't always like this. When we first got together, we were deeply in love. We had shared dreams of building a life together, raising a family, and supporting each other through thick and thin. Our early years of marriage were filled with joy and hope. We worked as a team, celebrated each other's successes, and comforted each other during hardships. The arrival of our children brought even more happiness, though it also added challenges. Things began to change when Sarah started expressing dissatisfaction with our relationship. At first, it was subtle comments about how she felt unfulfilled or how she envied friends who seemed to have more exciting lives. I tried to be supportive, suggesting date nights and finding ways to rekindle the spark. However, Sarah's dissatisfaction only seemed to grow. Her request to open our marriage came as a shock to me. I had never considered such an arrangement and initially resisted the idea. But her insistence and the implied threat of divorce left me feeling cornered. For the sake of our children, I reluctantly agreed. The transition to an open marriage was difficult for me. I've always valued emotional intimacy and loyalty, so the idea of Sarah being with someone else was deeply painful. Moving to a separate bedroom was a practical decision, but it also symbolized the growing emotional distance between us. While Sarah seemed to embrace the freedom of our new arrangement, I buried myself in work and focused on being the best father I could be. During this time, I avoided any discussions about Sarah's personal life. I didn't want to know who she was seeing or what she was doing. It was easier to compartmentalize and pretend that aspect of her life didn't exist. However, the lack of communication took a toll on our relationship. We became more like roommates than partners, coexisting in the same space but leading separate lives. When I finally began dating, it wasn't out of a desire to get back at Sarah, but to explore the part of my life I had ignored for years. Meeting Jane was a revelation. She reminded me of what it felt like to laugh without restraint, to share stories and dreams, and to feel genuinely appreciated. Being with Jane didn't erase the pain of my marriage, but it showed me that I could still find joy and connection outside of it. Sarah's reaction to my dating caught me off guard. For 2 years, she seemed perfectly content with our arrangement. Now, she was upset and adamant about renegotiating. Her demands felt hypocritical after all. This was her idea. She had 2 years to rethink it, but only spoke up when I found someone meaningful in my life. It made me question her motivations. Was she truly interested in fixing our marriage, or was she struggling with the idea of me finding happiness elsewhere? Her request for counseling and shared time as a couple made me reflect on our past. Could we rekindle what we once had? Or was the damage already too deep? Our conversations became tense, filled with unspoken frustrations. She wanted transparency about my relationship with Jane, but I couldn't bring myself to share. It felt intrusive, like she was trying to exert control over a part of my life she had chosen to relinquish. I thought about the kids constantly. Divorce would disrupt their lives in ways I couldn't fully predict. But staying in a loveless, transactional marriage might also affect them negatively. I wanted them to see what a healthy relationship looked like, to grow up understanding the value of love, trust, and respect. Right now, I wasn't sure Sarah and I could provide that example. One evening, after the kids were asleep, Sarah and I had a long conversation. She admitted that she'd struggled with jealousy and regret seeing me happy with someone else. I confessed that I'd felt abandoned when she first proposed opening the marriage. We talked about our unmet needs and the ways we had hurt each other, intentionally or not. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. But honesty didn't guarantee resolution. Sarah wanted to rebuild, but her vision of our future no longer aligned with mine. I had found a version of myself that felt whole and fulfilled, and I wasn't ready to give that up, not even for the sake of repairing our marriage. The idea of limiting my relationship with Jane to something purely physical felt dehumanizing and contrary to everything I valued about our connection. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself at a crossroads. On one hand, I could honor Sarah's wishes and try to repair what we had. It would mean compromise, counseling, and a commitment to transparency that I wasn't sure I could deliver. On the other hand, I could choose divorce, a painful, messy process that would force us to rebuild our lives separately, but might offer a chance at genuine happiness for both of us. Ultimately, I realized that the decision wasn't just about Sarah or Jane. It was about me and the life I wanted to lead. I didn't want to look back years from now and regret staying in a situation that no longer served me or my children. I wanted to model courage and authenticity for my kids, even if it meant making hard choices. I haven't made my decision yet, but I'm leaning toward divorce. It's not an easy choice, and the road ahead will be challenging. but I'm hopeful that, in time, we'll all find a path that leads to healing and happiness together or apart. When I reduced my work hours this summer, it felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in years, I had the freedom to focus on myself. Taking my son on a road trip was a wonderful experience that strengthened our bond. We explored winding highways, stopped at small-town diners, and shared laughter over silly roadside attractions. Those moments reminded me of how important it is to be present and cherish the time we have with loved ones. At home, I threw myself into renovating the house. Transforming the basement into a man cave was a project that brought me immense satisfaction. Picking out the perfect furniture, setting up a gaming area, and creating a space to unwind made me feel accomplished. It wasn't just about the room itself. It was about reclaiming a part of my life that had been overshadowed by stress and obligations. Working out and playing sports added another layer to my rediscovery. Feeling healthier and more confident wasn't just about physical changes. It was about reconnecting with the version of myself I'd almost forgotten. Dating was another significant step. It wasn't just about finding someone to spend time with, it was about rediscovering a part of myself that had been dormant for years. Meeting Jane felt like a turning point. She brought joy and excitement into my life, reminding me of what it felt like to connect with someone on a deeper level. Our shared love for hiking and trying out new cuisines turned casual outings into memorable experiences. We laughed at inside jokes and talked about our dreams, creating a bond that felt effortless and genuine. Being with Jane reminded me of the happiness that had been missing from my life for far too long. But not everyone was happy about my progress. Sarah's sudden interest in my dating life caught me off guard. For someone who had openly shared her own experiences, her intrusion into mine felt hypocritical. I'd made it clear that I didn't want to discuss my personal life with her. When she snooped through my phone, it felt like a betrayal. That invasion of privacy led to a heated argument. Years of unresolved grievances spilled out as we both vented frustrations we'd been harboring. It was exhausting and disheartening, but also revealing. Sarah's request to renegotiate the terms of our open marriage came shortly after. Her new rules were restrictive and one-sided, clearly aimed at limiting my freedom while preserving her own. The double standard was infuriating. I had been willing to respect her choices, yet she seemed incapable of doing the same for me. Her actions felt less like an attempt to rebuild our relationship and more like a desperate bid to regain control. At her insistence, we began attending couples counseling. Initially, I was hopeful. The counselor was professional, compassionate, and genuinely tried to help us find common ground. However, the sessions quickly highlighted the growing divide between us. Sarah's demands keeping the open relationship strictly physical, refusing to contribute financially by working, and insisting on buying a new house felt increasingly unreasonable. Her unwillingness to compromise made it clear she was more focused on her own needs than on rebuilding our partnership. One session took a dramatic turn when Sarah threatened divorce. Her ultimatum was a painful reminder of the one she'd given me 2 years ago when she first proposed the idea of an open marriage. After that session, she accused the counselor of taking my side and insisted we find someone else. I refused, believing the counselor had been fair and objective. It was another indication that Sarah wasn't interested in genuine resolution, she just wanted validation. Realizing that our marriage was beyond repair, I consulted a lawyer and initiated divorce proceedings. It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt necessary. Sarah will receive the papers in a few days. I've decided to give her 2 months to start supporting herself financially. After that, I won't provide any further assistance. This decision wasn't made lightly. I've spent countless nights agonizing over what's best for everyone involved, but I believe this is the right course of action for both of us. For context, my decision to work 74-hour weeks came after Sarah's request to open our marriage. Before that, I worked a more manageable 50 hours per week and was actively involved in family life. I wasn't out partying or neglecting my responsibilities. I was dedicated to my family. Sarah's request blindsided me. It felt like a rejection of everything I had worked so hard to build. In hindsight, I realized that was the moment our marriage began to unravel. Looking back, I'm struck by how much I've changed over the past 2.5 years. The challenges of our open marriage forced me to reevaluate my priorities and focus on personal growth. I've learned the importance of setting boundaries and standing up for myself. While the experience was painful, it also taught me resilience and self-respect. I'm no longer willing to sacrifice my well-being for someone who doesn't value me. My primary focus now is on my children. They deserve a stable, loving environment, and I'm committed to providing that for them. Our road trips, movie nights, and backyard soccer games are moments I treasure. I want them to grow up feeling secure and supported, knowing that they are my top priority. As for Jane, our relationship continues to grow. She has been a source of encouragement and positivity, helping me navigate this difficult transition. I'm excited to see where our journey takes us. With her, I've found a sense of peace and hope that had been missing for far too long. While the end of my marriage is bittersweet, I'm optimistic about the future. This new chapter is an opportunity to build a life that aligns with my values and aspirations. It's a chance to rediscover who I am and what truly makes me happy. To anyone facing similar challenges, my advice is to prioritize your well-being. It's easy to lose yourself in the demands of a difficult relationship, but taking the time to reflect on your needs and values is essential. Whether you choose to stay and work on your marriage or move on, remember that you deserve happiness and fulfillment. Life is too short to settle for anything less than what makes your heart feel full. The journey may be tough, but the rewards of staying true to yourself are immeasurable. For me, this summer wasn't just a season of change. It was a season of growth, discovery, and hope. And for that, I'll always be grateful.